Welcome back to the IU427 garage, everybody. We are on the final stretch to first start on the King's Cobra. And I want to go over some of the last minute details with you that you're going to want to check to make sure you've gotten done before you go ahead and hit the key on the car. All right, I've got a really short list of things that I want to do to this car before we first started. I do have a call into Buddy Anthony to see if he can free up some time one of the coming weekends here so that we can go ahead and get this thing started. And he'll fuss with the carburetor and do that kind of stuff. We'll get this thing dialed in just where it needs to go so that hopefully in the coming weeks, not only can we do the first start, but we can do a short go-kart run with this car as well. I'm hoping I can get the owner down here for that weekend, and that way he can go-kart the car and have some of the excitement that goes along with that, because he's kind of been, he's kind of missed some of that because of the distance that he lives from our shop. But first thing that I'm going to want to take care of today is taking care of the vacuum line that goes from the base of the carburetor to the vacuum advance on the distributor. So know this going in, there are different sizes of vacuum hose. You don't want a vacuum hose that's too small. You also don't want a vacuum hose that's easily crushed, because the vacuum that is inside that hose, you don't want it to collapse the hose. So wherever you're buying your vacuum hose, make sure that you let that auto parts store know that you're using it for a vacuum advance and not for supplying windshield wiper fluid to your washer, from your washer pump to the discharge tubes at your windshield, because that's usually a different kind of hose. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna tie in to the base of the carburetor, and I've already identified which port it is. I've put a cap on the vacuum that is full-time vacuum, and I have the cap off on the port that is the metered vacuum from the base of the carburetor. And so we're going to go from there to the vacuum advance right over there. I know I'm going to get the question, Frank, what do I do if the local auto parts store only has vacuum tubing that says windshield washer vacuum tubing? Well, check it. Open it up and see how pliable it is. See how thin it is. Squeeze it with your finger. If you can squeeze it flat with your finger and basically cut off all the air that's going through it, you don't want it. If it has a large enough outer skin that it does not compress to the point where it blocks vacuum, then you should be fine. So we went ahead, I think the vacuum hose that we're using on here is a 3/16 or a 7/32. It's hard to tell sometimes when I pull it out of the package, because the writing's so small, and even with my glasses sometimes I can't see it. But we've got it hooked to the bell on the vacuum advance for the distributor, and we've got it hooked to the vacuum port on the front of the carburetor. And this is the metered vacuum port, because that's what we want to attach it to. You can run it full advanced all the time and attach it to the open vacuum, which is the unmetered vacuum on the base of the carburetor. It's up to you. I prefer, as we put this car in service, to start with the metered vacuum port, just because it's going to allow us to basically add advance as we're going upwards. The next thing I'm sure I'm going to get a question on is, how do I know which of the ports on the base of my carburetor are metered vacuum and which are open vacuum, meaning vacuum all the time? The answer to that is, find out what carburetor you have. If you're not the one that purchased it, if it came with a crate engine from whoever, find out what the carburetor is. So in this case, I think we've got a quick fuel, and I wrote down the part number. And then I punched that in on the quick fuel website so that I could get all the specs on that carburetor, and it told me, according to which base style we had on the base of the carburetor, which were the open vacuum and which were the metered vacuum ports. And so what I did while the carburetor was off, because you guys saw I pulled a block off plate that was in between the carburetor and the intake manifold. Since I had the carburetor off anyways, I was able to flip it over. There's no fuel in this thing yet, so it was easy to flip over, look at the base. I was able to identify which base we had and which vacuum port that we wanted. And so what I did is I put a vacuum cap on the one we didn't need. I left the one that we were going to be using for the vacuum advance, I left it open, so that when time came today to run that vacuum line, I knew exactly what port to go ahead and take it to and tie it into. So that takes care of the actual carburetor and vacuum for the vacuum advance. I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and check to make sure this thing has oil in it. And then I'm going to go underneath the car and I'm going to make sure that we have transmission fluid in it at the level we need, or any transmission fluid at all, and then adjust it accordingly. All right, I have the dipstick for the engine oil out of the car, and I'm going to kind of show you how to read it and how I'm reading this one. So we have what is a stock style pan on this car, and I know that a Mustang, 5-liter Mustang of this vintage, would have been a 5-quart oil pan with a 1-quart oil filter change. So that would mean that there would be 1 quart of oil in the actual oil filter. So as you can see, we're running high. If you look at the hatch marks on this dipstick, we have oil that is above what would be full. So full would be right here where the arrow is on the dipstick. And see, it says full right there, and there's a line with an arrow down to this point right here. Our oil level is right about here. What that's telling me is that when this oil filter went in, the oil filter was not filled with oil. It's not a problem, because what we're going to do is we're going to actually turn the engine over without having the ignition hooked up before we ever start the engine, and we're going to build oil pressure. We're going to make sure we see oil pressure on the oil pressure gauge before we actually hook the ignition up to let the car fire. So we're basically priming it with the drive shaft of the oil pump gear that goes down from the distributor. So it's going to be fine. This engine has been run in. This engine has been dynoed. So it already has oil on the top end of the engine. However, it was shipped with no oil in it. And so when the owner, I'm assuming, put oil in it and spun a filter on, actually the oil filter may have been spun on by, I think this came from Mike Forte. So it may have been spun on by Mike Forte. It's probably empty too. So we will make sure that we're not over full and we have full oil pressure before we ever let the ignition fire the engine. All right, this is just one of those things. I wouldn't have felt comfortable not knowing whether or not there was oil in the oil filter. I can always drain a little bit of oil out of the pan and make sure that, we have oil inside of the filter. But I had to spin the oil filter off. So basically I've lost whatever the oil filter was worth because it was spun on so tight that I had to dent it to get it off. And you know, I'm using an oil filter wrench. Where did I put it? Oh, right here. So I'm using a strap style wrench because it's about the only thing that'll get in there. But I damaged the oil filter taking it off. So we're gonna basically toss this one, and you can see the dent I made in it. There's oil on the gasket, but the inside, there's no oil in it. So we're gonna go ahead, we'll replace this with another Wix filter. I've got some upstairs, I use these all the time. And we'll go ahead and we'll put as much oil in the filter as we can without spilling it all over the ground. So because this goes on the side of the engine at an angle, you can only put so much oil in the filter, but whatever oil we can get in there is better than nothing, and it'll help us prime the engine all that much quicker when we go ahead and prime the engine at first start. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna replace the oil filter with a new one, and then we'll move on to the transmission. Well, that sucks. I just went upstairs and went through the oil filters that I have in stock, and I don't have the 51515 Wix or the Motorcraft FL1A here. So I'm gonna have to pick one up to put it on the car. And I've got others that'll fit, but they're either the short ones, which is the, oh God, I can't remember the name of that one, or it's the long skinny one. I've got the 51516, which will fit this, but it's not the same capacity. It's only a 3/4 quart rather than a full quart filter. So I'll just pick one up, probably an FL1A locally. We'll fill it with oil and we'll move forward. All right, I'm under the car and checking the level of the transmission. So I pulled out the upper plug. There are two plugs on there. There's a drain plug. This is a T5. This is a Borg Warner. This is before Tremec bought Borg Warner or assumed possession of Borg Warner or whatever. So this is the lower. This is the drain plug. Up here, where my finger is the fill plug. So how I verified there's enough fluid in there is I backed out this plug and basically fluid started dripping out, which tells me that there's plenty of fluid in there. I don't need to worry about it. So it appears as though the car owner already filled the transmission with fluid. Now, since I've got it in the air, I'm probably gonna go ahead and refill the rear of the car, because if you look back at our previous videos on the brakes, we had to drain the rear differential so that we could pull the axles to get new brackets on for our brakes. So that is dry right now, and we've got a new gasket and the existing cover back on, and now it just needs to be refilled. Now, it was brand new fluid and a brand new rear end when we drained it. So I've got the fluid in the red bucket over there with the cover on it. I have to basically come up with a way to get it out of the bucket and into the differential housing. So I think what I'm gonna do is I've probably got a couple of partial bottles of gear lube on the shelf in the other part of the shop. And what I'll probably do is I'll empty out whatever's in those into another container. And I'll take the fluid that's in the bucket, I'll use a funnel to put that fluid into the bottles. And then normally what I do, those bottles come with a little like tapered end to them that you cut off. And what I do is I jam a piece of tubing on the end of the bottle. And if you push it on hard enough, it ain't coming off. And then I go up in there, insert the tube into the fill plug in the rear end differential, and basically just squeeze the bottle and get the fluid to go in there, and we'll just fill it until it's full. And if I don't have enough in the bucket, then I'll just grab some 90 weight multi-weight out of the shop out there, because I have some of that stuff, and we'll top it off. But since it's brand new in the bucket, it should be good to go, and the additive should already be in there. I'll double check with the car owner before I top it off, just to make sure that if it doesn't have any additive in there, that we'll go ahead and add some. But God, that stuff stinks. So I'll catch up with you guys tomorrow. I had to order oil filters. Thought I had one upstairs, went through all my oil filters. I have every filter except the one I need. So I went on to online and I ordered a dozen filters from Rock Auto. It's just cheaper to order by the dozen from Rock Auto because you're going to pay the same for shipping, or virtually the same for shipping, if you order one filter from them or a dozen. So I just ordered a dozen filters. Those are filters that I use all the time. And so I just figured might as well get some, stock up, and they'll be here next week. So I'll catch up with you guys tomorrow. All right, everybody, next day, I am under the car again tonight, and I made a complete mess of the floor in the shop. I don't know if this was the way the Texas car was, the prototype that we just delivered this past year, or what, but on the Moser axle, the fill plug is right there. So it's on the passenger side of the diff, and I don't remember it being there, but it just makes it awkward to get fluid in there. Normally, like on a Ford 8.8 differential, it's right here in the front, like right on the front of the pumpkin right here. And so I can get, and I'll show you my apparatus to get the fluid in there. I can get the tube and then the bottle and everything kind of up here, and I've got a direct shot at it. With it over here, you know, I was kind of holding the bottle up over here, and it was awkward. And so at one point, I couldn't see what I was doing, and the tube kind of slid off of the bottle as I was squeezing the bottle to get the fluid in, and I just made a mess of the top of the jack here, the bridge jack, because I had a little pan to catch whatever residual kind of came out of there when I was finished and had it full. And then of course it went all on the floor too. So I got the floor pretty much cleaned up. I don't know if kitty litter is a great way to get like oil and fuel and some other liquids off of your concrete and get it clean. But I think a lot of people kind of put it down and they spread it out, but they don't work it into the concrete. So what I do is I spread it out on the surface, and then I actually work it in with my foot really hard, like digging it in. So you're breaking down those little granules of kitty litter, and it'll actually pull the moisture, whatever it is, the oil, the fuel, out of the concrete. And then generally what I do is I'll just leave it here. Now, I'm the only one that works in the shop under the vehicle, so it's not a big deal. But just the nature of walking over this for the next week or so will also help draw any of that fluid back out of the concrete. And then the concrete will be pretty much good as new. I didn't have the chance when we moved the shop down here to get this floor sealed. At the other shop, I had sealed all the floors, so if I drop some, I just wipe it up with a paper towel. I didn't have to worry about getting it up with any, absorbent, what do they call it, speedy dry. Cat litter is kind of the same thing. It's just bigger granules. So I never had to really worry about it at the other shop. Here, it's an issue. And so, yeah, it was a big freaking mess, and the shop stinks. I got it on the arm of my hoodie that I was wearing. Of course, I had to take that and get it off because it stunk like gear oil. And if you know that smell of gear oil, it's just nasty, nasty stuff. So that's all full now. Other than putting the side pipes on for first start and putting some fuel in the tank, I think we're ready. All right, so this is my setup, guys. You can see this is the cap right here for the bottle. And then I jammed a piece of clear tube on the end of that spout with a breeze clamp. And I use that to get the fluid into the differential by just squeezing the bottle. And then I can just move that spout from one bottle to the next when I'm filling a differential from scratch, basically. But what I had to do is I had to empty one of my bottles here into a clean jar. And then I used this bottle and I filled it up with all of the fluid that we had pulled out of the red buckets. I had that out of the red bucket. I actually had to fill it up twice, and we were just short of filling it up completely. So I managed to just use some of the fluid that I had here to finish it off. So I think I'm going to end this video here. Hopefully, the next thing we'll be doing on the King Cobra, other than obviously heat and sound mat, because I think Mrs. IU427 has taken the evening off from the heat and sound mat, so I think I'm going to go up ahead and lower the car down and probably work out here for at least another hour, maybe hour and a half, and try to get some more heat and sound mat in the cockpit. And then hopefully we can get the cockpit at least done and I can move on to the trunk. And generally she doesn't like doing the trunk, so I'll do all those little pieces in there. But so I think that's going to do it for now. If you're enjoying the content here, as always, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.